Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's story, an entitled psycho Karen cannot accept that my disabled son and me moved into her neighborhood. She is determined to scare us out and she ends up shooting my son. She soon learns that you should never mess with an ex-soldier. Here is what happened. The title story starts like this. I am writing today about a particularly nasty encounter with a Karen neighbor here in my own neighborhood. For a little context first, after I retired from military service 5 years ago, I decided to sell my house to find a more accommodating situation for my son. His disability has meant that he has relied on a wheelchair for most of his life, struggling to adapt to an environment that did not support his needs. Finally though, we rested our sights on an HOA neighborhood not far from Manila in the heart of the Philippines. Moving in was stressful. As a Chinese national, I was worried that we would be considered outsiders or pests and rejected by our new neighbors. But thankfully, this did not happen. Everyone accepted and welcomed us, and yes, everyone except Karen at least. Sadly, this one neighbor caused trouble for us from the very beginning, loitering in our yard and harassing our movers and friends to the point that they left early. After telling her that I would not stand for this kind of treatment, she asked what I would do. I told her I would report her to the HOA, after which she left my yard laughing manically to herself. When I did later report her, I found out that she was actually a member on the HOA board and my heart sank at the realization. Now, I knew that this was not a problem that would go away by wishing for it. I would have to take matters into my own hands for my sake and for my son. Determined to take a stand, I tirelessly appealed to the HOA to investigate the abuse and was told each time, "We would look into it," with nothing ever coming from it. If being entitled and abusive was not horrible enough, she openly told us that the reason she picked on us was because we were Chinese, ordering us on multiple occasions to leave her neighborhood because we were not welcome here. We ignored her, of course, and it seemed about the only thing we could do at that time. And then, one night after we came home late from a parent-teacher evening at his special needs school, we noticed that the yard had been defiled. Like an explosion at the joke store, toilet paper and trash was scattered everywhere in a huge mess. The front door had also been defaced with "Get Out" written large in a foul-smelling red substance. I put my son to bed, easing his nerves as best as I could while hiding my own. Leaving the house again, I also noticed under the pile were the broken remains of my son's toys that we had left in the backyard. I called the cops, and while they were able to help me secure the property, they offered no other insight or action, citing it probably as just kids messing around. All the while, a smug Karen stood smiling at her window, no doubt pleased at the aftermath of her work. The next morning, she even had the audacity to confront me about the incident, warning me to quickly clean up the mess because we are making the neighborhood look run down. I showed her my middle finger and continued cleaning it up, with my son helping where he could. I called the cops back over to discuss the crime, but was once again left disappointed at the outcome. Karen must have been getting nervous at their continued presence, sending us another subtle warning the next morning in the form of a supposedly anonymous death threat. A week later, the yard was clean and my son was outside playing with some new toys. After explaining our nightmare to my friends, they had gathered a charity drop-off to make up for the toys he had lost and was excited to go into the yard again. The next incident came a week later. My son was playing in the backyard while I sat in the upstairs office leaving a review for a restaurant we had tried the other night. All of a sudden, a loud noise echoed through the neighborhood, causing me to immediately jump to my feet, and with my prior experience, I immediately recognized the sound as a gunshot. I ran through the hallway and moved towards the back door, through which I saw my son's wheelchair was tipped over, but he was not there. With increased urgency, I swung open the door and made my way outside, almost shattering the glass as it hit the wall. I turned to find my son on the floor nearby and Karen standing in my yard looking at him. Carefully turning him over, I found a small red patch on his shoulder that grew as blood began to seep through his shirt. Checking the area, I looked back and found a handgun set in Karen's hands. Without thinking, I moved over to her, snatching the handgun out of her grasp with one hand and a sharp chop to the throat with my free hand, immediately knocking her to the floor. I stood over her, fighting off the anger that would have me continue my assault until I heard my son saved me with a weak protest. I left her there coughing and wheezing as I focused on treating my son. Karen tried to crawl away back to the safety of her yard, and I was torn between stopping her escape or continuing the treatment. Instead though, my son decided for me, resting his hand on mine, and he told me to go get her, so resolved to see her pay, I quickly caught up to her and pinned her in a painful arm lock until the reinforcements arrived. A few minutes later, a police car arrived, followed closely by an ambulance, and the street is now cordoned off and nosy neighbors were ushered away from the scene. The cops questioned me and Karen while the paramedics were preparing to transport my son to the hospital, and luckily she was a lousy shot and it was not life-threatening. Karen took to her treatment poorly, reverting back to a shouting match rather than keeping her cool in the moment. The police asked me if I wanted to press charges on this lunatic, and I of course did. This only bought her a one-way ticket to the station, where she would be questioned again after she cooled off. I, on the other hand, was allowed to follow my son after cooperating politely. I stayed by his bedside all night, only woken up sometime in the early morning by a visiting cop to follow up on some questions. Taking the opportunity to tell my side of the story, I told him about the weeks of harassment we had suffered prior to today, and we were assured that this time something would be done about it. A week later, my son was back at home while Karen waited for her trial. It turns out that while the cops were digging into her history, there was a trail of suspicious activity that led back to the HOA itself too. They uncovered a substantial degree of tax fraud, bringing the whole board in to face charges. We attended the final court date with a smuggled bag of popcorn. Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison for her list of charges, while her HOA friends were made to pay a huge fine or face a similar penalty. The HOA retired the very next day, and now the neighborhood is great. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, if we have like a ranking or a list of where HOAs are the worst, I'm pretty sure that the Philippines and South Africa, at least so far, rank pretty high up on that list. The American HOAs are not even the worst you can find in the world. Still, I don't think I would buy a house in an HOA in America either. Anyway, if you enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is titled Laundry and Revenge. So I live in an apartment building with a common laundry room. There are 4 washers and 4 dryers. The laundry room opens at 9 AM, and one morning I bring my laundry down right at 9 AM. As I arrive, I realize I forgot my laundry cart in my apartment, so I leave my laundry in the basket and leave the basket on a machine. I then retrieve my cart and then return to the laundry room. In the 5 minutes I've been gone, one of my neighbors had loaded all 4 washing machines with their clothes and linens. I expressed my disapproval of her selfishness and pointed out that there was obviously another tenant who was looking to do laundry. She gave me a barely coherent excuse about just needing to get the laundry done. At this point, the machines are loaded and the cycle has begun. Pissed, I take my clothes back upstairs. At this point, I am fuming about how someone could be so inconsiderate. I know that the washing machines take 30 minutes for a cycle, the dryers take an hour for a cycle. So then I waited about 28 minutes, then returned to the laundry room. I started a cycle on each of the dryers on the heat-free setting, forcing the rude neighbor to wait an hour to finish their laundry. This was the best $8 I ever spent. And the next one is titled Entitled Parents Are Raging. I will keep this short and sweet. About 10 years ago, my family did not respond well to me growing up. I'm talking arguments over my partner, career and place of living. I almost got kicked out before graduation and was looking for homeless shelters at 20 years old instead of studying like every other young person my age. We went silent for 3 years and are at very low contact. We reconnect to moderate visits, and then due to issues with my sibling in the pandemic, a housing crisis and medical problems, I get estranged from my sibling. My sibling had a surgery and got angry I would not get them groceries in person. I was so sick I was only using Instacart to keep myself safe. The riff with sibling is the second time this has happened. My parents go nuclear and discuss disownment regularly. I tell them to knock it off or we won't speak. To my understanding, I am legally and financially disowned. I got engaged last year to the partner my partners never liked. They want to give money to control the ceremony and I tell them no. This starts another feud and they remind me that I am disowned, I go no contact. My parents occasionally reach out desperately wanting to go to my wedding. They are not invited and we are too much on the rocks for me to entertain it. But also, why do they need to go if I am disowned? Update to the story. It's been a few months since I posted about my entitled parents wanting to come to my wedding. Since then, things have taken a turn for the worse. My partner and I had planned the perfect wedding, but we did not invite my parents as mentioned before. We just could not handle the thought of them ruining our special day. We thought we were safe, but we were wrong. So the day of the wedding arrived and everything was going smoothly. My partner and I exchanged vows and shared our first dance as husband and wife. But then out of nowhere my parents burst into the reception hall causing a scene and demanding to be let in. They were yelling and causing a commotion, but security was able to escort them out. However, they did not give up that easily. A few hours later they showed up again and this time things escalated quickly. My parents were drunk and angry and they started to physically assault my partner. It was a terrifying moment, but thankfully some of our guests were able to hold them back and call the police on them. My parents were finally arrested for assault and public intoxication. The rest of the night was ruined, but my partner and I still managed to have a small celebration with our closest friends and family. Overall, we had a great time, but the thought of what could have happened still haunts us. Since then, my parents have been out of the picture. They were sentenced to some time in jail and we have had no contact with them. We have moved on and are living our best lives, but the memories of that day will stay with us forever. I never thought that my parents would be capable of such a thing, but it just goes to show that entitled behavior knows no boundaries. My partner and I are just grateful that we have each other and that we can live a peaceful life free from their drama. And the next one is titled, Never Try to Scam an Artist. So this happened when I was young, heard it secondhand from my grandma, who is the main character of the cast, lived with at the time. My uncle's ex-girlfriend was an all-around horrible person. Abusive babysitter, got my uncle into bad crowds and legal trouble, and dabbled in so many substances from A to Z. She was also heavily tattooed, and there was an artist, the star of the story, who was a family friend. The dude is great, does insane work, and she asks him to do a piece for her. Huge intricate angel wings, oh the irony, across her back, and he agrees. It then takes several sessions across weeks and she repeatedly has to postpone payment, but he is chill, family friend, yada yada. Until it comes to the last session, when it slips that she still does not have the money and more importantly, won't have the money like ever. Here comes the pro revenge. No collection agency, no refusal to continue. So he smiles, waves it off and says he will finish up, no charge. He says it's gonna be a great piece, absolutely legendary. Especially one for the history books, he guarantees. And she is stoked. So right between those gorgeous wings right up her spine, this idiot now has a massive veiny male appendage proudly standing at attention up her spine. She saw it in the mirror when he finished and she was livid. But hey, what is she gonna do? She didn't pay him and wasn't gonna pay him and expected hours and hours of free work. You give a lot of trust to someone when they take a needle to your skin to lay down something permanent. Don't stiff your artists. And yeah, ripe stars, this woman might potentially be one of the stupidest people on the planet. If you try to scam your tattoo artist, obviously something like this will happen. Absolutely mind-blowing. The next one is an Am I the Jerk story. Some backstory, my mom has always wanted a daughter. Instead, she ended up with 2 sons and 6 grandsons. 16 years ago, a young woman with a 2-year-old daughter, let's call her Lily, moved across the street from her. She was a single mom and did not have any family in the area, so my mom offered to help take care of the little girl while her mom worked and studied. Over the years, she has become an adoptive mom/grandma to this woman and her daughter. She was there when the woman married her husband and had 2 more girls together. She is very close to the whole family, but especially Lily. My mom was born and raised in Italy. My dad was French and my brother and I don't speak any French or Italian. Lily is not only fluent in French and Italian, but she knows more about the culture than me or my brother, and she knows all of my mom's recipes. My mom also helped pay for her private school tuition because she doesn't like the public schools in the area. Lily, my son and my nephew graduated from high school in May. My son and my nephew each got a card and a check for $300. My mom took Lily to Europe for 8 weeks over the summer. I got to my mom's house with my sons last night. We planned on staying for a few days because we live 8 hours away. I was parked in the driveway, and then right before dinner, my mom told me I needed to move my car so Lily could park in her driveway. I said Lily could park on the street, but my mom said no. The driveway is Lily's spot and I have to move, so I told my sons to get our bags and we went home. My mom has been calling me since last night, asking me to come back and saying I overreacted to being asked to move my car. I refused and my sons and I are celebrating without her, but I'm starting to wonder if I was the a-hole for leaving when my mom told me to move my car. Comment number 1, not the a-hole. As we say around here, this is not about the Iranian yogurt. This is a reaction to years of feeling second class to Lily because as sons you somehow did not fulfill some weird desire of your mom's preferred genitalia. I'm sorry you have felt this way for so long. It is hard to watch your mom seemingly show someone else more affection than they do to you. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. It's ridiculously unnecessary to make you feel like second class. Just a weird power move to ask you to move your car. And yeah, dear viewers, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? And tell me why. The next one is titled Downstairs Neighbor Revenge. My husband and I moved into a third-story apartment with my 2 dogs. The neighbor below me worked nights. It was during the pandemic and both my husband and I were working from home, so naturally we made noise during the day. We took our dogs to the dog park every day, luxury of working from home, and multiple walks so they would mostly just sleep. Also, they are not young. 5 and 9, well, I guess my neighbor below us really hated the situation. I don't doubt we were making noise. We were there 24/7, living and working, walking around, having intercourse in and out for the dogs. She called the apartment complex and put in a complaint saying that we kept our dogs on the balcony and they bark all day. This was the biggest lie, and the apartment complex has a rule about leaving your dogs on the balcony unattended, so she knew this could get us in trouble. We got multiple calls. "We have told you, you cannot leave your dogs on the balcony." I eventually snapped. "Did you see my dogs on the balcony? They are not." So after that I made sure to do laundry all day every day and maybe got a little more heavy-footed. Don't lie to get my family in trouble just because you work nights and we don't, and it is the pandemic and I'm living and working from home. The calls then stopped. Number 1, since some people are so concerned with how this played out, no, she never once asked nicely before we got the first phone call, but I think some of you are missing the point. What would she have asked of us? "Hey, I know it's a pandemic, but you're working and living from home. Could you please tiptoe around from 10 AM to 6 PM? I work nights. Thank you." I know that sounds super unreasonable, but if she would have done this, we honestly would probably have tried tiptoeing around. However, she didn't. She lied multiple times. You guys, we got multiple calls. After the first phone call, I left a note on her door asking her to give me a call. I wanted to know what time she was trying to sleep. We were planning on tiptoeing around even after we knew she lied. However, when the calls kept coming, this is when I turned petty. Number 2, while on the phone she said she slept from 10 AM to 6 PM. Yeah, okay, that is when we are supposed to tiptoe around. That just ain't happening. Number 3, I stopped clogging after a few weeks. I did not drag it on, got my frustrations out, and I think she got the point. I'm not that cruel. Number 4, the apartment complex actually said to me once, "If you are really not leaving your dogs on your balcony, there is nothing she can do." You all realize if I wanted to be super petty, I would have put in complaints about her, right? Considering she was awake at night, I could have very easily made complaints about her TV being on at 2 to 5 AM, which did wake me up a few times, which I didn't. I handled the situation myself. Next, yes, we moved into an apartment complex with 2 dogs. Get off your high horse. Number 6, we moved when our lease was up into a home with a fenced-in backyard for the pups. I'm such a monster. And the next one is titled Cancel the order now, I am taking my business elsewhere. So years ago I worked in a call center for a large sporting goods store. It was a seasonal position for the holidays and we were thrown right into the thick of it. 8-hour shifts with back-to-back calls lasting on average 10 minutes each. It was pretty stressful for us since our sales were way higher than expected. Lots of stuff was back ordered or out of stock for good. I dealt with my fair share of irate people, but since it was not face to face, it was actually pretty easy to handle. One lady calls in and was a little stern, but she had just been on hold for nearly 30 minutes. We get through the order and I am checking on the stock of some big ticket items I knew were going to be back ordered. So I get to some random thing and it was out of back ordered for 6 months, which shocked me. I explained this to her and how she won't get a charge for the item until it ships. I offer to help her select a replacement item with a shorter wait time. She comes unglued and starts yelling at me. She goes on to say, "Cancel the order, I'm taking my business elsewhere." I try to explain to her that I can save the order if she wishes so. If she happens to change her mind, she does not have to read off product numbers again. She does not really let me explain myself and keeps cutting me off. So then she says, "Just cancel the damn order. Don't save it. I'm never shopping here again." So I do as she pleases. I cancel the order and I flag her account as suspended due to her saying that she was never shopping with us again. She hangs up and I go about my day. Towards the end of the shift I get a call and the number of the phone number is linked to a suspended account. The man on the phone explains how his wife wanted to place an order earlier in the day but cancelled it due to us not having what she wanted. I realized this is the same account as earlier, so we have to go through a long process of reactivating the account and then re-entering all the items. It took nearly 30 minutes to complete, and at the end of the call, the wife gets back on the phone and starts yelling again. There is a bit of a struggle and the husband gets the phone back and tells me to just place the order, which I do. Because her account was suspended, she lost a lot of points she had gotten and moved herself back even further on the list. Funny thing was, after I left, I found out from a former coworker that they only made 1,500 more of this item, so every after that on the list never got it. Well, had she just listened to me. Edit, I have copy and pasted a comment I made which explains that I was not the one who suspended the account, I simply just flagged it. According to my policy, any customer who claimed they were never going to shop with us again would get their account flagged, and then a higher level would review it. The review would include looking at order frequency, order amounts, and any notes included. Then the reviewer would call or email the customer asking them why they wanted their account terminated. Now, this process usually takes a few weeks to go from the time the account is flagged to the time the account is cancelled. Due to high call volume, the reviewers were just blindly cancelling accounts that were flagged without any follow-up. I did not intend for it to happen so quickly, I just wanted this lady to be annoyed by us calling her back and maybe someday having to reactivate the account. So I followed protocol by flagging the account and cancelling the order. Due to the consequences of me following protocol, it became malicious. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.